The Spy Who Wore Red Lipstick, Josephine Baker's Secret War in the World War II. The City of Lights had gone dark, but one woman, draped in feathers, sequins, and a crimson smile, kept the lights burning in secret. Her name was Josephine Baker, the world's most famous entertainer. To the Germans, she was just another glamorous distraction. To the Allies, she was a weapon of elegance, a spy in heels, hiding resistance messages in her sheet music, her gowns, even in her lipstick tube. Every stage became a battlefield, every song a coded message, every applause cover for espionage. The Nazis adored her, but they never knew that the woman singing J'ai deux amours was sending their plans straight to London. This is not a love story. This is the story of how a woman of color, born in segregation, became the most dangerous performer in Europe, and how her laughter became France's secret anthem of survival.
Act 1. The Stage and the Shadow. Before she was a spy, she was a scandal. Born in Missouri in 1906, Josephine Baker grew up in the Jim Crow South, cleaning houses by day, dancing on street corners by night. When America turned its back on her, France opened its arms. By the 1930s, she was Europe's brightest star, adored by Parisians, painted by artists, adored by men, and envied by women. But fame, she would later say, was just a disguise that fooled the wrong people. When the Nazis marched into Paris in 1940, they banned jazz, banned mixed-race performers, banned everything Josephine represented except her charm. German officers filled the cabarets to see her dance. They saw a body. They never saw the mind behind it. One night, at the Club des Champs-Élysées, she noticed a German colonel whispering details of troop movements to a French collaborator. She smiled, sang louder, and memorized every word of the conversation. Later that night, she wrote it all down in invisible ink on her sheet music. The next morning, her pianist carried that same sheet across the border, hidden in plain sight inside a music case marked Performance Materials. That was the night Josephine Baker joined the French resistance. To her audiences, she was still the dazzling Josephine, the woman who could make Paris forget its war for 3 minutes at a time. But backstage, she was Agent 1343B, reporting directly to Jacques Tabté, head of French counterintelligence. Tabté later said she had the best weapon of all, celebrity. She could walk anywhere. No one searched the woman everyone wanted to see. Josephine began performing across occupied Europe, not just to entertain, but to listen. Every whisper in the VIP lounges became data. Every flirtation a reconnaissance mission. She learned that men would tell her anything if she only smiled the right way. Behind that red lipstick was a memory sharper than any blade. And so, the spy was born, not in the shadows, but under the spotlight.
Act 2. The Lady and the Lie. The trick to surviving espionage is simple. Look harmless while being lethal. Josephine Baker mastered that art like no one else. By 1941, the French resistance had been fractured. Half of France now operated under Vichy control, collaborating with the Nazis. For spies, the line between charm and death was razor thin. Josephine crossed that line every day, smiling. She arrived at the Hotel Splendid in Marseille, wearing a crimson gown and pearls so bright they reflected the ceiling lights like stars. A Nazi officer stood at the bar, whispering about troop redeployments to Tunisia. Josephine laughed loudly, just enough to be noticed. "Ah, monsieur," she said in fluent French. "Do you know what I find fascinating about war? The uniforms. So precise, so easily copied.
He chuckled, unaware that she had just stolen his attention, and his itinerary subtly slipped from his coat pocket by her assistant. When the meeting ended, the colonel bowed and kissed her hand. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes said, "Thank you for your service." That night, in her hotel suite, she pulled out the folded paper. Coordinates, movement orders, the kind of information that could change the tide in North Africa. She wrote the notes in invisible ink on the margins of her concert sheet, humming as she worked. To anyone watching, she was just rehearsing. Every journey became an act, every performance a cover story. She carried intelligence for Free French agents across the Mediterranean disguised as a touring entertainer. At border checkpoints, Nazi soldiers saluted her and asked for autographs. Sometimes she signed them, "Love, Josephine." Other times, she signed with a coded flourish to mark which officers could be trusted or blackmailed. Abti once warned her, "Josephine, if they find you out, they will shoot you on the spot." She laughed, sipping champagne. "Darling, they already shoot at me when I dance." Her Paris fame shielded her, but only for so long. Word spread among German officials that Baker was too friendly with Gaullists. When her shows were banned, she didn't hide, she moved. In late 1941, Josephine left Paris behind and retreated to her estate in Dordogne, officially to recover from bronchitis. In truth, her mansion became a safe house for resistance members. She sheltered agents, stored weapons, and kept her piano full of passports. Every guest who visited her estate was greeted with a drink, a smile, and the possibility of salvation. Her cover was perfect. To the Nazis, she was a diva in exile. To the French resistance, she was their most dangerous weapon with a heartbeat. And to the world, she was still Josephine Baker dancing in red lipstick while Europe burned.
Act 3. Invisible ink and dangerous notes. Music had always been her language. Now it was her cipher. When German officers filled her concerts, they thought they were hearing love songs. They never knew they were listening to war reports set to melody. Inside her dressing room, Josephine laid her sheet music on the vanity table. To the naked eye, it was just notes and lyrics. But between the staves, written in invisible ink, were intelligence reports, troop numbers, supply routes, and coordinates. The ink was made from lemon juice and water, visible only when heated. Her pianist would hold the pages over a lamp to read them, each message glowing like a ghostly confession. Sometimes she'd carry more than just music. Microfilm was sewn into her costumes, tucked beneath sequins, hidden in corset seams. Even her pet cheetah, Chiquita, had once carried a tiny roll of coated film under its collar. Josephine laughed when Abte told her it was too dangerous. "Darling, if they strip search me, the war is already lost." Each journey was a gamble. Every border checkpoint a stage where the audience carried rifles. When she performed in Lisbon, neutral territory crawling with spies, she was approached by a German diplomat who adored her singing. "Fräulein Baker, your voice is a weapon." She smiled. "Yes, but you should hear my silence." He didn't understand. He never would. By 1942, she was ferrying critical intelligence between French Africa and Allied command in Lisbon. Abte traveled with her, disguised as her manager. Their luggage was filled with sheet music and secrets. At customs, officers flipped through her papers. One guard paused, tapping a page suspiciously. "Too many notes," he muttered. Josephine leaned closer, smiling sweetly. "You think I'm overcompensating." The room laughed, the guard blushed, and the spy walked free, her coded reports still intact. Later that night, in her hotel suite, she leaned over the balcony, watching the Atlantic waves shimmer under moonlight.
She whispered, "Sing, Josephine. They'll never see you coming." The next day, those same notes, invisible, elegant, lethal, reached London. They carried intelligence that saved Allied troops in Tunisia from a surprise Axis counterattack. She had done it again, a spy with lipstick, laughter, and nerves stronger than steel. But whispers spread that German agents were now hunting her, a jazz singer turned ghost. Abte begged her to lie low. She refused. "France needs rhythm. If I stop singing, she stops breathing." Her war had just begun, and her stage was getting darker.
Act 4. The Lady Vanishes. By late 1942, the applause had turned dangerous. Josephine Baker's name was still printed on posters, but now it was also whispered in interrogation rooms. German intelligence had begun asking questions. Who was this woman who traveled so freely between borders? Who could dine with generals one night and vanish the next? She was in Casablanca when she first realized the net was closing in. Two men in gray coats appeared at every performance, never clapping, never drinking. They waited until the last song, always the same one, J'ai deux amours. It was her signature ballad, I Have Two Loves, My Country and Paris. But now, those lyrics had turned literal. She was singing to France and to freedom. One night, after her final bow, she returned to her suite to find her suitcase open, her papers rifled through. Nothing taken except the top sheet of music, the one with invisible ink. She froze. Then slowly, she smiled. "They think they've caught me," she whispered, "but they've only stolen the chorus." Within hours, she and Abte packed their belongings and disappeared into the night. Destination, Spain. The journey through the Pyrenees was brutal. Snow bit her heels, fever burned her throat. The world-famous Josephine Baker, who once danced in diamonds, now trudged through mud with a forged passport and a secret worth dying for. At the Spanish border, a Nazi officer stopped their car. He leaned in, glancing at her passport, then at her face. "You look familiar," he said. She laughed softly. "Of course, darling. I'm Josephine Baker. You've seen me dance in Paris." The officer blinked, startled by the absurdity. A wanted spy wouldn't announce herself. He waved them through. As the car rolled forward, Abte exhaled in disbelief. Josephine winked. Sometimes hiding means being seen. In Madrid, her fever worsened. Doctors diagnosed sepsis, nearly fatal. While recovering, she refused to rest. Even in her hospital bed, she kept scribbling notes, charting troop movements from overheard conversations, using medical charts as cover. "Josephine," Abte warned, "you'll die." "Then let me die useful," she said. Her health barely returned by spring, but she insisted on performing again, this time in North Africa, under Free French command. She would sing for soldiers by day and deliver messages by night. As the war darkened, Josephine's legend only grew. The woman who once made Paris dream was now the dose the Nazis could never catch. Every time they thought they had found her trail, they found only perfume and laughter. "The Lady Vanishes," a German report read. It wasn't wrong. She had become her own illusion. Act 5. The Song Behind Enemy Lines. The war had scattered the music of Europe. Jazz outlawed, clubs destroyed, cities silenced. But in 1943, when Allied troops landed in North Africa, a familiar voice rose through the static of military radio. It was her. Josephine Baker, broadcasting live from Algiers. She opened with her anthem, J'ai deux amours. The soldiers laughed. Some even cried. They'd heard bombs all week. Now they heard home. Josephine had officially joined the Free French forces, working under General Charles de Gaulle's command. Her new uniform wasn't silk, it was khaki. Her weapon wasn't a pistol, it was a microphone. She entertained Allied soldiers, French refugees, and North African volunteers in makeshift camps from Casablanca to Cairo. Her stage was sand and wind. Her spotlight was a lantern hung from a truck. Between sets, she carried intelligence reports sewn into her sheet music, still marked with the faint traces of invisible ink. When military officers met her backstage, she'd slide coded messages inside her glove, pass it during a handshake, and smile as if nothing happened. Her shows were electrifying. She'd tell jokes between songs. If the Nazis hate jazz, let's make them hate laughter too. Crowds roared, unaware that their laughter was a cover for secret exchanges happening behind the curtains. Her influence spread beyond the camps. BBC journalists began reporting sightings of a mysterious woman in red lipstick performing for Allied troops in liberated towns. Everywhere she sang, morale rose. Everywhere she went, rumors followed. Did you know she's working for de Gaulle? The truth was even bolder. She wasn't just performing for France, she was performing as France. But not everyone loved the idea of a black woman standing at the heart of the Free French movement. Some officers grumbled that she didn't belong in uniform. Josephine's reply cut through the smoke. France made me a star when America made me a maid. I'll fight for the country that saw my humanity first. Her words silenced the room. De Gaulle himself would later call her the heart that kept France beating when her lungs were full of smoke. By late 1943, Josephine had become a one-woman army of hope, an unarmed ambassador whose songs carried more weight than bullets. Every stage she stepped on became occupied territory reclaimed by melody. When she sang La Marseillaise in Algiers, French officers stood at attention. Some wept openly. In that moment, she wasn't just Josephine Baker. She was Liberty, wearing red lipstick instead of a crown.
Act 6. The Spy and the Storm. By 1944, Josephine Baker had seen more war than applause. The desert tours had drained her body, the constant travel had worn her voice, and a mysterious fever had returned, the same infection that had almost killed her in Spain. But she refused to stop. "They can take my stage," she said, "but not my song." Still, the storm was gathering. Even among the Free French ranks, whispers began. How could one woman move so freely across borders? How did she know so much? And why did her reports always seem to reach headquarters before everyone else's? Some officers, jealous or suspicious, accused her of being a double agent. When Abtai brought her the news, Josephine only smiled faintly. "If I were a traitor, dear, the Germans would have built me a statue by now." The investigation lasted weeks. Her every movement watched, her every conversation logged. But they found nothing, only her voice echoing through the camps, singing for soldiers who'd forgotten what peace felt like. The same generals who doubted her ended up requesting private performances. Because in a war where morale was currency, Josephine was priceless. Then, the illness struck again. Midway through a concert in Morocco, she collapsed mid-song. Her hands trembled, her breath failed. Doctors diagnosed an intestinal infection and ordered immediate evacuation to Casablanca. In the hospital, feverish and delirious, she still hummed the tunes she used to encode messages, the habit of a spy who never turned off the mission. Abtai sat beside her, holding her hand as bombs thundered miles away. "You've done enough," he whispered. She stirred, smiling weakly. "Not until Paris hears me again." For months, she remained bedridden, her once silken voice reduced to a whisper. But even there, she worked. She dictated reports from memory, recalling troop numbers and supply routes from conversations she'd overheard weeks before. Every note was a small act of rebellion against weakness itself. By the time she could stand again, the Allies were advancing on France. Josephine begged to return to the front lines, not as a soldier, but as a symbol. "They cheered me when I danced," she told Abtai. "Now let them cheer when I rise." When she stepped out of the hospital in her uniform, frail but unbroken, reporters gathered. A photographer captured her saluting with a smile, lipstick perfect, posture steady. The headline read, "Josephine Baker sings again. France's strongest voice returns." What the public didn't see were her bandaged wrists or the sheet music in her coat pocket, still coded, still ready. The storm had tested her faith. It hadn't silenced her melody.
Act 7. Liberation in Lipstick. Paris, 1944. After 4 long years, the city was alive again. Not with jazz, not with laughter, but with the sound of liberation. Church bells rang over the crackle of machine guns, flags unfurled from shattered windows. The world's most elegant city had been bruised, but not broken. And neither had Josephine Baker. She arrived with the first wave of Free French forces from North Africa, wearing her officer's uniform and her signature red lipstick. No feathers, no sequins, just pride. As her jeep rolled through the streets, Parisians stopped and stared. Some whispered her name in disbelief. "Josephine? C'est impossible!" For the first time, she wasn't on stage. She was in the story. The entertainer had become the embodiment of everything France wanted to remember about itself. Grace under fire, courage in beauty, freedom in rhythm. When she stepped onto the steps of the Opera Garnier, the very theater where she once danced for applause, she now saluted for victory. Tears blurred the crowd. Reporters shouted, "Mademoiselle Baker, will you perform again?" She smiled. Yes, but not for money, for France. Her first post-liberation performance was organized for Allied troops stationed in Paris. There were no fancy lights, no orchestra, no champagne. Just a piano, a flag, and a woman who'd survived both fame and fascism. She opened with J'ai deux amours. The same song that once masked her espionage was now sung freely, loudly, gloriously. The soldiers joined in. Americans, Africans, French, their voices trembling, their eyes wet. When the song ended, Josephine whispered into the microphone, "My two loves, my country and my freedom, are finally the same thing." The crowd erupted. That night, she didn't just sing. She forgave. In the weeks that followed, Josephine visited hospitals across France, performing for wounded soldiers and displaced families. Children followed her like she was a saint. Nurses wept when she entered the wards. Everywhere she went, she carried a suitcase full of lipstick. Her way of painting hope back on France's face. When asked why she wore it, even in uniform, she laughed. Because lipstick is proof that war didn't win. For her service, General de Gaulle awarded her the Croix de Guerre and the Rosette de la Résistance. When the medals were pinned on her uniform, she stood perfectly still. The same way she had when spotlights once hit her on stage. But this time, there was no applause. Only silence. Reverent, grateful, eternal. Josephine Baker, once the girl from Missouri who scrubbed floors, now stood as France's most decorated performer and one of its quietest spies. Act 8. The Price of Silence. Wars end with parades, not peace. And for Josephine Baker, victory came wrapped in applause, the loudest kind of silence. When the Allies declared triumph in 1945, Paris roared with life again. Josephine was invited to perform at every gala, every military ceremony, every ball celebrating liberation. She smiled, she sang, and she bowed. But inside, something remained quiet, a secret that applause could not reach. She had spent years carrying messages that decided battles, risking her life under the nose of the Gestapo, and now no one wanted to talk about it. They wanted the dancer back. They wanted the feathers, the jokes, the music. So she gave them the show, but not the truth. At cocktail parties, men in tuxedos would raise their glasses and say, "Mademoiselle Baker, you were France's sunshine during the war." She'd smile and reply, "Darling, I was more of a storm cloud with good lighting." They laughed, not knowing how true that was. She could never tell them about the secret meetings in Casablanca, the invisible ink, the narrow escapes, or the comrades who didn't make it back. Even Jacques Abte, her former handler, warned her to stay silent. "The fewer people know what you did," he said, "the safer you remain." She nodded. But silence, she discovered, was its own kind of prison. Her post-war life sparkled on the surface. She toured the world again, London, New York, Rio. The same stages she once used as camouflage now became altars of celebration. Crowds screamed for the entertainer. Few remembered the operative. When asked about her medals, she brushed them off with humor. "Oh, those old things? I just earned them for dancing in bad weather." Only in private did she open the small wooden box that held her Croix de Guerre and Rosette de la Résistance. She'd stare at them quietly, tracing the ribbons with her finger, whispering the names of those who never came home. In 1947, she married again, a band leader named Jo Bouillon, and bought an estate in Dordogne, the same property that once sheltered resistance fighters. She renamed it Les Milondes. It became her sanctuary, filled with rescued animals, laughter, and children. Yet sometimes, late at night, she'd walk through the gardens alone, humming war songs in the dark. Her husband once found her standing by a pond at dawn, medals in hand. "Do you miss the stage?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, I miss the mission." The world adored the performer. Only France remembered the spy. And even France did so quietly, because Josephine Baker's war was not of blood and trenches, but of whispers and waltzes. It didn't fit neatly into textbooks or military archives. It fit only in her heart and in the silence between songs.
Act 9. Liberty's Daughter. When peace finally came, Josephine Baker didn't retire, she redeployed. The war had ended, but the same poison she fought in Europe was still alive elsewhere. Racism, segregation, the quiet cruelty of superiority disguised as order. She had risked her life for France's liberty. Now she wanted to remind the world what liberty truly meant. In 1951, she returned to the United States, the country that once rejected her. She was scheduled to perform at a glamorous Miami hotel, but when she arrived, the staff refused to serve her because of her skin color. The same hands that once carried secret war codes now slammed the table. "If I can die for France," she said, "I can sing for everyone." She canceled the show and walked out. The story made national headlines. Josephine Baker, war hero and international star, had just declared war on segregation. From then on, she refused to perform anywhere that enforced racial discrimination. Clubs either changed their policies or lost their biggest act. Her courage rippled through America. Suddenly, the woman who had once fought fascists was now a face of civil rights. Glamorous, powerful, and uncompromising. Back home in France, she transformed her estate, Les Milandes, into what she called the Rainbow Tribe. She adopted 12 children from different nationalities: Japanese, Israeli, African, Scandinavian, and Native American, and raised them together. Her goal was simple, impossible, and beautiful: to prove that humanity could live as one family. "I want people to see," she said, "that color is not a wall, it's a painting." Her home became a living museum of tolerance. Tourists came from all over to see her children of peace. She didn't just preach equality, she staged it. Then came 1963. On a humid August day, she stood before 250,000 people at the Lincoln Memorial, beside Martin Luther King Jr. She wore her Free French uniform, medals gleaming in the sun. "I have walked into the palaces of kings and queens," she said, "but I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee." The crowd erupted. For a moment, the world saw not a star, but a soldier of humanity. In her twilight years, Josephine continued performing, still dancing, still singing, still fearless. She called herself La Femme Libre, the free woman. Freedom was no longer a flag for her, it was a way of breathing. "I fought Nazis with jazz," she once said. "Now I fight hate with love." And like before, she did it with red lipstick and a smile that could disarm an army. Act 10. The Final Curtain. The war had long ended. The applause had come and gone, but Josephine Baker never stopped performing. For her, the stage was not vanity, it was oxygen. By the 1970s, she was in her late 60s. Her body ached, her finances had collapsed, and her beloved estate, Les Milandes, had been seized by creditors. The Rainbow Tribe scattered. The tabloids called her a forgotten relic of jazz. But they forgot one thing. Josephine Baker had been forgotten before, and she always came back louder. In 1975, Paris prepared a grand retrospective to honor her 50 years on stage, a celebration of her life's work. The show was titled Josephine à Bobino. It was held in the same city she once saved in silence. The audience was a mixture of royalty, veterans, and old friends: Grace Kelly, Sophia Loren, Mick Jagger, and a few aging soldiers who still remembered her in uniform. Backstage, as the makeup artist touched up her lipstick, Josephine joked, "Make it red enough for de Gaulle to see from heaven." She glanced at the mirror and saw the same face that had fooled Nazis, inspired troops, and sung to freedom. "I'm ready," she said. And she was. The curtain rose. The crowd gasped. There she was, not as a ghost of the past, but as a flame reborn. She danced through her old numbers, her body slower, but her soul untamed. Her laughter filled the hall. Her eyes still had that secret mischief, the same look that once tricked a Nazi colonel into underestimating her. Every song was a memory, every step a heartbeat of history. When she sang J'ai des amours for the last time, the audience stood. No one clapped at first, they just watched. Some were crying. Even the young ones who didn't know her story could feel it. She ended with a salute. "My two loves, France and freedom, still dance." The applause shook the hall like thunder. Josephine Baker bowed deeply, her medals glinting under the lights. 4 days later, on April 12, 1975, she was found in her bed, still surrounded by the glowing reviews of her comeback show. She had died peacefully in her sleep. A soldier's rest, a performer's exit, a hero's silence. Paris went into mourning. Thousands gathered for her funeral at the Church of the Madeleine. Her coffin, draped in the French flag, was escorted by soldiers of the French Air Force. The band played La Marseillaise. A fighter jet flew overhead, trailing the colors of the Republic. France had lost its favorite daughter, but she had already given them everything. In 2021, nearly half a century later, Josephine Baker was reinterred at the Pantheon in Paris, the resting place of France's greatest heroes. She became the first black woman and the first entertainer to ever receive that honor. As her name was engraved in stone, a single red rose was placed on her plaque. It matched the lipstick she wore the night she first saved a country with a song. "Freedom," she had once said, "is not given, it is sung." And Josephine Baker sang it better than anyone. She sang for peace. She danced for freedom. She spied for justice. Josephine Baker, the woman who fought empires with a song and a smile. History often forgets the women who carried wars on their shoulders, but not this one. Because some heroes wear medals, and others wear red lipstick.